Hey all. For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Sara Munjack, and I am Maria's assistant and just overall helper with various things, with teaching and with these videos. So sometimes for each week I record a video and sometimes Maria does. So this week I'm going to be talking to you all about white space erasure poems, also called redactions, and the page as a reverse canvas. This is a super broad umbrella, and whatever I talk about in the few minutes that I'm going to try to work a little quickly here, because I personally could go on about this for probably hours. There's a lot to talk about and notice and play with these types of forms, but I'm going to try to push myself to be quick here so that I can at least get in what I want to get in for the short period of time for this video. So I'm going to jump right into it. Erasure poems are also kind of known as redaction poems. They have a slight difference, and so many of you probably know what blackout poetry is. It's a great way to get younger kids into poetry, to notice poetry, to see poems sort of appear out of the woodwork everywhere you look. So it's simply taking a piece of text and removing parts of it or redacting parts of it with blackout, originally like literally with like a black Sharpie. And then the new poem forms from whichever words or phrases are left out of what's scratched out. Um, so that's just a silly little example here that I found, which you'll see it forms a new poem, Creativity Meets. We don't see part of the original title here. A small child with support, inspiration, and love. Not really a poem, but I just wanted to conceptually show you visually how that looks. Now, erasure poetry sort of takes blackout or redacted poetry to the next level. And what it does is it takes that existing text and that we have left here. So if we have these words here, and it frames it as a new poem. So we don't visually get the sort of scratching out as a part of it. It becomes a new poem in itself visually. So this is a great example of that. One of the before we look at that is one of the things you can do with that is that you can start to rearrange. So it doesn't have to. You can start to put it in lines or stanzas, and you can start to leave those leftover words and push it into whatever form you'd like. And as we keep going, you'll kind of see more of that and why that might be important. So this is Jay Dodd's inaugural poem for Redacted. He came a tyrant, threatened, voices silenced as misery. Forget us, our nation, self-righteous, and the forgotten. So I won't read the whole thing just for lack of time, but you can see that this might have been taken from an inaugural speech, and there's a poem from that. And so we don't actually get the blackout here, but we get the appearance of a new poem. And we see what that white space is doing, that fragmentation, that pause, that breath, that emphasis. So that's really fun. I mean, this is heavy content matter, so I hesitate to say fun, but it's creative and unique. This is part of your reading, so I highly recommend reading that whole piece. It's quite moving. So then from that, we also have found poetry, which is sort of like a cousin or similar concept. So what we do is we take our original text. It could be a piece of mail, it could be a handbook, it could be anything, a piece of prose, it could even be another poem. And then what we do is using only the words or phrases or passages from those sources, we use that as like our word bank for our new poem. So there's much more freedom here. I mean, you can literally just kind of like pick and choose words as long as they appear from their original text and mishmash it into whatever, rearrange it to whatever order you want in your new poem. So you can make changes in the spacing and the lines and the order, and that gives the new writer a lot of freedom. So this poem is actually a poem I wrote a long time ago, but I thought it would be helpful to show What I literally did, it's called Calisthenics to Break Up, is I took a love letter that my ex-partner and I had, so a love letter that my ex-partner had written to me. And after our breakup, this is many, many years ago, but after our breakup, he broke up with me. I sent him this poem back, sort of, it's so dramatic. God, why are poets like this? But I sent him a poem back, um, only using words found in that love letter that he had written to me years ago. So, and the reason this is so hard to read is because I literally sat on the floor and physically got scissors and cut up his letter from that long ago, a copy of his letter, and sat with glue and like rearranged all the words and made my little sort of literary collage from his piece. So it's much easier if you just do that in Microsoft Word or whichever processor you use. But the point of this here, I'll just briefly read it. Calisthenics to Break Up. Anxious 6 flexible times. You must be as someone I try to display as impressive, with a very slight hint of a custard flavor. For one thing, I had a feeling, a half joke, a half-hearted impetus, the most amount of flexible. Lastly, I feel that I've also finalized myself. I feel sincerely myself, my thoughts addressed in a paper-based home. I'll stick some words, telling you recent communications in regret. We've gotten all inconsistent. It didn't feel entirely accurate. Something that I've efficiently balanced, enclosed for purposes of the future. Lately, I still have individual standard, a pot of lentils, a little less, a little better. So that's my dramatic self. But one thing that found poetry can do is there's a new meaning that arises with whatever you choose to use as that original text. So whatever you use as that original text should add some nuance or some layer of meaning to why you used that to frame the new text. So it's fun. You can really have a lot of play there, with sort of texture and feeling and conversation. And then I know that I'm kind of pushing the time, but I just wanted to touch briefly on this beautiful um, book. I have it right here in front of me. It's Ghost of by Diana Coy Nguyen, and it won an Omnidon Prize selected by Terrence Hayes. And the entire book is basically kind of reverse canvas, pages reverse canvas, white space, found poetry, erasure poetry, all of that kind of played with in this collection. So, I mean, we won't really read this, but I just wanted to visually show you what's going on here. The book is sort of an elegy to her brother who committed suicide, and many of the pieces quite literally take a family photo, cut her brother with her brother cut out, and a piece of text in place. So it talks a lot about fragmentation. So here we have a similar thing where that white space is being deployed. We have a piece of the poem appearing over here in this kind of solitary way. I mean, I literally see the word solitary. Um, I mean, this work to me is just breathtaking, incredibly intentional, incredibly meaningful, incredibly visual, and I mean, your body, it caught fire. How glad you were to take it off. You took yourself off. You took yourself out. So, I mean, it reads quite, it's heavy, but it's so beautiful. And it's a great example of how you can use white space and these various forms to really get a meaning very heavily handed across. So it's not a form for the dainty handed, but there's a lot you can do with this. And I would say a great starting point is if you can't think of anything right off the bat that's that obvious to you, what got me first into it is just literally pick up a piece of literature. It could be the handbook for your dishwasher, if you still have that lying around, or anything like that. And write a poem, just using those words as a word bank. That's a great way to write a found poem or a blackout poem or an erasure poem. So I hope you have fun with it and hope you have a great workshop. Thanks so much.